Today marks the 211th anniversary of two of the most important battles of the Napoleonic Wars, the battles of Ligny and Quatre. Fought 2 days before Waterloo, these twin engagements unfolded across the Belgian countryside and would shape the fate of Napoleon's final campaign. While the emperor sought to divide and defeat his enemies before they could unite, Allied forces rushed to block his advance toward Brussels. For generations, the story of the Waterloo campaign has been dominated by the climactic Battle of Mont Saint-Jean, fought on the 18th of June. Yet 2 days earlier, at Ligny and Quatre, thousands of soldiers had already begun the struggle that would decide the future of Europe. This documentary seeks to shine a light on the often overlooked contributions of the Dutch, Selbst, German, Hanoverian and Prussian troops who fought alongside their British allies to check Napoleon's advance. Their courage, sacrifice and determination played a crucial role in the dramatic events that culminated at Waterloo. Join us as we retrace the opening moves of Napoleon's final gamble and revisit the battles that set the stage for one of history's most famous confrontations. And do not forget to like, share, subscribe, and hype this video to support this channel.
Lionsberg Cinematic History presents the Battle of Ligny, the last victory. In his sensational return to power, Napoleon had made just one mistake, which was to prove costly. He did not wait until Europe's ministers and sovereigns had dispersed after their conclave in Vienna before crossing from Elbe. Consequently, they were all still together when news of Napoleon's return came in. The Congress then went to the limits of international law and beyond by declaring Bonaparte an outlaw. War was declared not on France, but on one man, Napoleon Bonaparte. That's impressive even by modern standards. A new coalition was formed, and the plan was to flood France with a force of more than 500,000 troops. The raw coalition forces included about 100,000 Prussians under Field Marshal Blücher, another roughly 100,000 of Anglo-Dutch German and Brunswickers under the Duke of Wellington and the Prince of Orange, about 200,000 Austrians under Schwarzenberg, another couple of 100,000 Russians under Barclay de Tolly, and 75,000 Austrians on the Riviera. Time was of the essence, and the emperor knew that. Napoleon tried to buy more time by sending letters of peace to the European monarchs, but by 1815, all of Europe can see right through the emperor's plan. Napoleon returned to a bankrupt France with no foreign revenue, an empty treasury, and a massive war to finance. To fund his war preparations, he cut naval spending, raised emergency loans, and ordered the sale of state lands and forests. He also launched a national patriotic donation drive, urging citizens and soldiers to contribute money or goods. Despite these efforts, funds remained scarce. Napoleon's campaign relied on credit, improvisation, and the hope that victory would restore France's fortunes. Napoleon had ordered the creation of 8 army corps and appointed his loyal marshal, Louis-Nicolas Davout, as the new war minister. But Davout, although an outstanding commander on the battlefield, was new to the ministry and struggled at his new job. Marshal Berthier's absence was mostly felt, who had held that post since the beginning of Napoleon's meteoric rise, but was found mysteriously dead on the 1st of June, 1815. On the same day itself, deputations gathered in Paris for the Champ de Mai, the state occasion at which Napoleon amended the civil code and presented new eagles to the French army. As coalition forces advanced to the north, Napoleon had to decide his strategy. There were only 2 realistic options: either to preempt the Allies by defeating the Prussian and Anglo-Dutch armies before the Russians and Austrians could join them, or to remain on the defensive as in 1814. Napoleon decided to go for the preemptive strike.
Finally, l'Armée du Nord, the Army of the North, was put together. About 89,000 infantry, 22,000 cavalry, 11,000 gunners, and 366 engineers were mobilized to the Belgian front. This comprised of the 1st Corps under Comte d'Erlon, the 2nd Corps under Honoré Charles Ray, the 3rd under Vandamme, the 4th under Gérard, the 6th under Mouton-Lobau, the reserve cavalry under Marshal Grouchy, and the Imperial Guard Corps directly under the Emperor. The 5th Corps under Jean Rapp was stationed at Strasbourg as a part of the Armée du Rhin.
On the 12th of June, Napoleon left Paris in the early hours for the frontier. Napoleon's plan was simple but brilliant, to strike between the two Allied armies and crush each in turn. He chose to attack the Prussians first, knowing that Blücher was bold and impulsive, while Wellington was cautious and deliberate. Napoleon reasoned that Blücher would rush to support Wellington far quicker than Wellington would move to help Blücher. Napoleon thus split his forces into two parts. The 1st and the 2nd Corps were put under the command of Marshal Ney, who was to march towards Quatre and take control of the crossroads. Judging Blücher by his impetuousness, Napoleon correctly anticipated the old general to give battle at Ligny. The 3rd, 4th, and 6th Corps, the Guard Corps and the reserve cavalry under Marshal Grouchy, will follow the Emperor to Fleurus and confront the Prussian army at Ligny and Saint-Amand. Dawn on June 15th, the French 2nd Corps crossed the border, capturing Lobos and Thuin and securing a bridge over the Sambre River at Marchienne-au-Pont. However, the French advance met stiff resistance at Marcinelle, where Prussian riflemen halted the cavalry's attack. Napoleon, angered by the setback, ordered a renewed assault supported by horse artillery and guard engineers, who soon forced the Prussians to retreat. Napoleon's advance suffered an early setback when General Bourmont, commander of the 14th Division, defected to the Prussians. While pretending to scout ahead, he and several officers rode into enemy lines, revealing vital French plans. The news infuriated his troops, and order was restored only after Comte Gérard personally intervened to calm the men and reaffirm their loyalty.
By 11 a.m., Charleroi was in French hands, and the Prussian garrison fell back toward Gilly. Napoleon entered the city to the cheers of soldiers and civilians, established his headquarters, and directed Payol's cavalry to pursue the enemy.
By midday, Marshal Ney arrived and was given command of the left column, with orders to capture Gosselies and continue the advance. By June 1815, Feldmarschall Blücher commanded the Prussian army with General Gneisenau as his chief of staff, the same team that had fought with distinction in 1813 and 1814. Though determined and aggressive, their army faced serious problems. Many troops were inexperienced Landwehr, poorly equipped, and drawn from newly annexed provinces of doubtful loyalty. On June the 15th, Ziethen's 1st Corps beat a fighting retreat from the border and gave time for the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Corps to march towards Sombreffe and Ligny. The 2nd Corps under Pirch was deployed west of Sombreffe along the highway. It formed the reserve to the 1st Corps. The 3rd Corps under Thielmann was deployed east of Sombreffe. Bülow's 4th Corps was on march from Liège and would not reach Ligny to take part in the battle. The battlefield of Ligny was on the watershed between the rivers Scheldt and Meuse. The Ligny stream meanders in a northeast direction through the small village of Ligny to the confluence at Sombreffe. To the left of Ligny was the village of Saint-Amand, and to its right were Sombreffe, Tongrenel, Boignet, and Balâtre, respectively. The windmill of Bray on a hill northwest from Ligny was a suitable vantage point, and Blücher made it his headquarters during the battle. Napoleon placed his headquarters in Fleurus, where he also had a good view of the battlefield from the windmill of Navarre. Blücher had 3 army corps under his command, about 84,000 men and 224 guns in total. Ziethen's First Corps took up positions along the Ligny brook, fortifying the villages for battle. The villages of Saint-Amand and Ligny formed the core of the line. Steinmetz's and Jargau's brigades held Saint-Amand, while 6 battalions of Henkel's brigade defended Ligny itself. Perche's brigade stood in reserve near the Bossou mill, ready to reinforce where needed. Behind the line, Roeder's reserve cavalry waited in the hollow ground, prepared to charge when the moment came. The western part of Saint-Amand and the nearby village of Wagnelli were less defensible and only lightly garrisoned. The Prussians occupied every hamlet and guarded all 4 bridges along the stream. To the north, the Second Corps under General von Perche I held positions near Bray, along the road leading from Quatre. Their task was to secure communication with the Anglo-Dutch army, whom Blücher expected to join him. Meanwhile, on the Prussian left, the Third Corps under von Thielemann was deployed along the Ligny brook near Sombreffe, anchoring the southern end of Blücher's position. Earlier that day, at their meeting in Bray, Wellington cautioned Blücher that the Prussian line at Ligny was dangerously overstretched. Still, he assured him that reinforcements would be sent, as long as his own army wasn't attacked. Blücher, however, remained confident in his plan. He was counting on von Bülow's 4th Corps, along with Wellington's support, to strengthen his temporarily exposed positions. For the ease of explanation, we have divided the events of the Battle of Ligny into 3 parts. Vandam's fight for Saint-Amand on the left, Gérard's fight for Ligny at the center, and Grouchy's cavalry assault to the right.
Before we continue, a quick note. If you've enjoyed the documentary so far, please consider checking out my detailed video on Napoleon's final years in exile on St. Helena. Narrated by a good friend of mine, it explores the Emperor's last days, his death, and his legacy. Despite the effort that went into making it, the YouTube algorithm has largely overlooked the video. You'll find the link above and in the description below. Your support would be greatly appreciated. Now, let's return to the campaign of 1815.
At 2 p.m., General Lefol of the 8th French Infantry Division rallied his men with a cry, "The Prussians will be crushed as at Jena." As the Emperor signaled, the French guns thundered. Bands struck up Le Chant du Départ. Vandam's First Corps, with Lefol's and Gérard's divisions, advanced toward Saint-Amand and Saint-Amand-la Haye to strike the defending Prussians of von Zieten's First Corps. The Prussians opened fire as Lefol's men pushed through high wheat towards Saint-Amand. Making their way through heavy cannonade and Prussian volleys, and after savage fighting in the orchards and churchyard, the Lefol's division gained control over Saint-Amand. Pushing further beyond the hamlet, Lefol's men came under devastating cannon fire from the ridge and were forced to fall back to the hamlet. Girard's division joined the attack from the west. Girard's division joined the attack from the west, storming Saint-Amand-la-Haye in brutal close combat and drove the 29th Prussian infantry out of the hamlet. Both villages changed hands repeatedly in the blood-soaked struggle. The Prussian counterattacks were answered by French, and by mid-afternoon, Girard's division was shattered, losing over half its strength, while Steinmetz's Prussian brigade suffered similar losses. Around 4 p.m., Field Marshal Blücher arrived, shouting, "Forward, in God's name!" Blücher personally led Perche's brigade into a counterattack that briefly retook Saint-Amand, driving Girard's men off the hamlet.
Our men are running.
Girard was mortally wounded in the process. French cavalry soon hit the disorganized Prussians, and Perche's men fell back under heavy pressure. Tippelskirch's 5th Brigade then advanced through Vagnelay, recapturing Saint-Amand-la-Haye in a fierce bayonet charge despite confusion and severe losses. Habert's French infantry division was committed to plug the gaps and counterattack the Prussians. Meanwhile, panic erupted in Vandam's corps when troops mistook approaching soldiers for the Anglo-Dutch troops of Wellington. Immediately, 8 regiments of the Young Guards were sent forward to support Vandam. The alarm ended only when the enemy proved to be d'Erlon's 1st Corps, but Ney, fighting at Quatre, recalled them. This blunder cost Napoleon the chance to envelop Blücher's flank and annihilate the Prussian army. As evening fell, Vandam renewed his attack with support from the Young Guard and Guard artillery. French guns and Prussian batteries pounded the burning villages in a deafening duel. Blücher reinforced Seaton's corps with Perche's men, who stormed Saint-Amand again, capturing the church but suffering terrible losses from French fire. Cavalry clashes raged west of the village, with Uhlans, dragoons, and Landwehr horse fighting the French to a standstill. Gradually, the Prussians regained ground. Brause's and Tippelskirch's brigades counterattacked, driving Vandam's exhausted divisions from Saint-Amand and Saint-Amand-la-Haye in savage street fighting. General Lafol narrowly escaped capture, and General Girard was mortally wounded, later honored by Napoleon as the Duc de Ligny. Saint-Amand was supposed to be the center of French assault, but it turned into a stalemate thanks to the miscommunication with d'Erlon's corps. As darkness enveloped, the battle between Vandam and Ziethen became limited to artillery and skirmish combat. Parts of Saint-Amand remained in Prussian hands until the total French occupation of Ligny to the center. The village of Ligny was defended by 6 battalions of Henkel's 4th Prussian Brigade, supported by Schutzen riflemen and Landwehr militia. The defenders fortified the village, barricading doors, removing windows, and occupying walls and hedges. 6 more battalions from Jargeau's 3rd Brigade held positions between Ligny and the Bois de Loup wood, while 16 to 24 Prussian guns covered the high ground behind the village. The attack on Ligny fell to General Etienne Maurice Gérard's 4th French Corps, veteran troops and reinforced by artillery from the Imperial Guard. Gérard, a seasoned commander of Austerlitz, Wagram, and Borodino fame, led Péchot's and Vichery's divisions, about 9,000 men, against roughly the same number of Prussians supported by 24 guns. General Etienne Maurice Gérard is not to be confused with General Jean-Baptiste Gérard, who was the commanding officer of the 7th Infantry Division under Vandamme. Around 3 p.m., after a fierce artillery bombardment that set many houses ablaze, Gérard's infantry advanced in 3 columns, 2 toward the village and 1 toward the chateau to the south. The French crossed open ground under heavy Prussian musket fire. The fighting quickly became brutal. Soldiers clambered over walls and fences, firing at point-blank range. The 30th Line Infantry lost 700 men in minutes. Prussian counterattacks momentarily threw the French back, but Gérard's artillery and fresh reinforcements pushed them forward again. Soon, French troops gained a foothold inside Ligny, turning gardens and courtyards into killing grounds. Major von Bünau's battalion of the 19th Prussian Infantry fought fiercely in the streets and fields, repelling multiple French assaults with disciplined volleys and bayonet charges. At the churchyard, the struggle grew desperate. French battalions stormed the walls, supported by 2 guns firing at close range. The Prussians fell back but counterattacked fiercely, retaking the cemetery and even capturing 2 French guns. Gérard's men regrouped and assaulted again, retaking the position in savage hand-to-hand combat. Bayonets, musket butts, and even fists were used as both sides fought to exhaustion. Meanwhile, Jagau's 3rd Prussian Brigade advanced into Ligny to relieve Henkel's worn-out troops. His battalions briefly recaptured the church, but 2 French battalions counterattacked and drove them out once more. Around the burning church, the struggle continued amid thick smoke and falling debris. At around 4 p.m., the nearby chateau was also under attack. French sappers tried to smash the gates while artillery bombarded the walls at point-blank range. Fire spread rapidly, forcing the Prussian defenders to leap from the windows as Gérard's men surrounded the flaming building. By late afternoon, 2 fresh Prussian brigades, Kraft's 6th and Beauce's 8th, were thrown into the fight to retake the village. The French artillery roared as new Prussian battalions crossed the stream again and again, only to be driven back each time. The entire village was now an inferno, packed with soldiers locked in hand-to-hand struggle, streets choked with dead and wounded. As evening approached, the Prussians briefly gained the upper hand, pushing Gérard's weary men out of parts of the village. But the fire in the village was unbearable, and many Prussian battalions fell back to the adjacent woods, weakening the defense of the village. All it needed was one great push, and Ligny would fall in the French hands. But to continue his attacks on the hamlet, Gérard needed reinforcements. So the stage was set for Napoleon's final, decisive assault later that evening. As dusk fell, the battle between Marshal Grouchy and General Thielemann erupted. Napoleon had dispatched Marshal Emmanuel Grouchy, an experienced but cautious commander, to secure the French right flank. His force, 1 infantry and 5 cavalry divisions, was meant to prevent a Prussian counterattack. Though lacking heavy artillery, it was a formidable mix of Gérard's infantry and the cavalry corps of Pajol and Exelmans, including dragoons and light horsemen. Facing him stood Thielemann's 3rd Prussian Corps, supported by Colonel Karl von Clausewitz as Chief of Staff. Thielemann, a veteran Saxon general who had fought at Borodino and Leipzig, commanded mainly infantry, 27 battalions, most of them Landwehr militia, composed of older, less trained men. His cavalry, under General Hobe, was scattered, with detachments posted far across the field. The clash began between 4 and 6 p.m., when Hulot's French infantry attacked the Prussian positions at Tongren and Sombrefi. French light troops, skilled skirmishers known for agility and precision, harassed the Prussian lines, firing from flanks and disappearing into the twilight. The Prussians counterattacked with bayonets, but struggled to pin them down. Artillery duels thundered across the field as Thieleman's men, reinforced with heavy guns, held firm. Meanwhile, Grouchy's cavalry, mostly green-coated dragoons under Excelmans and Pajol, charged against the Prussian infantry squares, achieved little. Prussian dragoons countered fiercely but were outnumbered. Near Boigny, 2 squadrons were overwhelmed, and their battery was seized. By nightfall, both sides were exhausted. Queen Marshal Grouchy had failed to break through, and Thielemann, despite his weaker militia, had contained the French advance. It was a minor engagement compared to the greater struggle raging at Ligny, but vital nonetheless. Thielemann's stubborn defense fixed Grouchy's corps, ensuring that neither could aid their commanders at the decisive battles to come.
A thunderstorm rolled in with the evening darkness as Napoleon readied his imperial guards to deliver the decisive strike against the Prussian center. Lobau's 6th Corps was summoned from Charleroi earlier, and the young guard withdrawn from Vandamme, prompting Blücher to believe he had won.
At 7:45 p.m., 10 battalions of the Old Guard advanced in 2 massive columns, grenadiers and chasseurs, the elite of France. Drums beat beneath the storm as artillery thundered from the mound of Tombe de Ligny, pounding the Prussian positions. Behind them marched Gérard's 4th Corps, followed by Milhaud's cuirassiers and the Guard's heavy cavalry. The Guard stormed into Ligny, sweeping all resistance aside with the bayonet. The Guard pushed beyond the village toward Briey Mill. The 5th and 9th cuirassiers smashed through Prussian lines, seizing guns and scattering defenders, where Prussian infantry and Landwehr cavalry were shattered in close combat. Desperate to save his army, Blücher personally led a last cavalry charge, shouting, "In the devil's name, attack then!" His Uhlans and dragoons hurled themselves at the French Guard, but were cut down by musket fire and counter-charges. Blücher's horse was shot beneath him, trapping him as French cavalry thundered past, unaware of the fallen commander.
The Prussian center was broken. With Field Marshal Blücher injured and removed from the battlefield, command passed to Graf von Gneisenau and General von Grollmann. Fearing total encirclement by the French forces, Gneisenau ordered a retreat toward Tilly, 2 miles north of Briey. Many central battalions had become separated, making coordinated movement difficult. However, at Saint-Amand-la-Haye and Wagnerley, the Prussians retreated in good order. After the French occupied Ligny and Saint-Amand, Napoleon hesitated to push further in darkness. The Prussian skirmishers and light cavalry screened the Prussian movements, and the French were confident of a battle the next day. However, in the veil of darkness, the Prussian army retreated successfully to Tilly and Jonbleu.
This escape would have tremendous outcome in the later events of the campaign. Although the French were unaware, the Battle of Ligny was over, leaving about 12,000 French dead and over 16,000 Prussians dead. Napoleon, victorious but cautious, spent the night at Fleurus. Blücher regrouped at Tilly, defeated but unbroken. As the Emperor tried his might to push the Prussians away, Marshal Ney was busy fighting the Dutch and Nassau troops under the Prince of Orange at Quatre. Lionsburg Cinematic History presents The Battle of Quatre. On 7th of May, 1815, King Willem I of Netherlands issues a decree appointing the Duke of Wellington the Field Marshal of the Netherlands Army. With the general staff established, the Duke organized the army into 3 corps and a reserve. The hereditary Prince of Orange-Nassau was given the command of the 1st Corps. Lieutenant General Rowland, Lord Hill commanded the 2nd Corps. The British and Hanoverian cavalry and the horse artillery were combined into 1 command under the Earl of Uxbridge, while the reserve, which consisted of a variety of troops, was in the vicinity of Brussels under the direct command of the Duke. Another inveterate enemy of France was Friedrich Wilhelm, the Duke of Brunswick. Following the death of his father at the Battle of Auerstedt in 1806, the young Duke had taken arms against the French. But after a series of reversals in mainland Europe, he fled to England, raised an army corps, and joined the British in the Peninsular War. Thus, when Napoleon returned to power in 1815, the Duke of Brunswick agreed to raise a new corps for service alongside the British and was at Wellington's disposal on this day. Wellington had spread the entire Anglo-Dutch army to all the key locations in the Low Countries. Thus, we shall discuss only the troops of interest taking part in the Battle of Quatre. By June, the Anglo-Allied army began receiving reinforcements from the German states, particularly the Nassau contingents associated with the House of Orange. On the 7th of June, the 3 battalions of the 1st Nassau-Usingen Regiment, under the command of Major General Baron August von Kruse, arrived in the Low Countries. They were quartered in the vicinity of Brussels as part of the infantry reserve, along with the Brunswick Corps and the 5th and 6th Divisions. The 3 battalions of the 2nd Nassau-Usingen Regiment and the 1st Battalion of Orange-Nassau had been stationed in the Low Countries since 1814 as part of the United Netherlands Army, and formed a brigade within the 2nd Netherlands Division under Baron Perponcha Sedelnitsky. The troops were deployed in Hutin-le-Val, Frasnes, Genappe, and the surrounding area. The troops of the 3rd Infantry Division under Henry Chas were further down to the south, along with the Dutch and Belgian cavalry. With the arrival of the Nassau troops, the Allied army now numbered 112,000 men, with 204 pieces of artillery. The Prussian army, led by Field Marshal Blücher, was still on the march towards Sombrefa, approaching 127,000 men with 304 guns. On the 15th of June, 1815, Napoleon crossed the border and entered Belgium. He then divided his army into 2 parts. The 1st and the 2nd Corps were put under the command of Marshal Ney. They were to march towards Quatre. The rest of the army under Napoleon marched towards Ligny. Napoleon's plan was simple. He wanted to pin the Prussians under Field Marshal Blücher at Ligny, as Marshal Ney captured the crossroads and used the Nivelles-Namur road to envelope the Prussians and defeat them in detail. This was a valid plan as it relied on the fact Quatre was guarded by a few Dutch and Belgian battalions, and that the Anglo-Dutch army was still spread out across Belgium. Thus, the French were not expecting much action to take place at the crossroads. At around 3:30 p.m., Marshal Ney joined the Emperor on the road north of the town. Napoleon gave Ney the command of the left column, with the promise that it would be enhanced in the morning by the 2 divisions of heavy cavalry under Kellermann. He explained that the vanguard was formed by the troops of the 2nd Corps and was advancing on Gosselies. The 1st Corps under d'Erlon was delayed due to the bottlenecks created by the bridges and river crossings by the border. Napoleon instructed the Marshal to take command of the available 2nd Corps, seize the town, and pursue the enemy. Accordingly, Ney rode forward to animate his men. As Ney reached the front, Comte Ray dislodged the Prussians from Gosselies and established it his headquarters. Marshal Ney, however, then arrived and ordered the light cavalry of the Garde Imperial and the 5th Division of Infantry towards Frasnes. When the division arrived upon the heights close to the village of Frasnes, the vanguard from the 2nd Light Regiment, encountered a battalion of 2nd Nassau-Usingen Brigade and a battery of horse artillery, commanded by Captain Adrian Bielevel, positioned on both sides of the high road. The Nassau troops resisted, and only the intervention of French cavalry forced them to retire. Despite being menaced on all sides, the Allied troops fell back in perfect order as far as the crossroads at Quatre, and the French cavalry were forced to desist. Despite multiple attempts to dislodge the defenders, the French vanguard fell back as the darkness prevailed. The troops of the 2nd Corps settled into their bivouacs on their way to Quatre. The 5th Division halted before Melay, with Piret's cavalry forming up just behind the village. The 9th and the 6th Divisions occupied Gosselies. Ney established his headquarters at the Maison du Mont, gathering reports from his commanders. Lacking staff support and unaware of Napoleon's broader plan, he spent the night urgently piecing together the situation while the army rested. Let us now turn to the Anglo-Dutch camp. Baron Perponcher Sedelnitsky, recently appointed commander of the 2nd Netherlands Division, had Van Bilant's brigade at Nivelles and Prince Bernhard's brigade bivouacked around Quatre and Genappe on the night of the 15th of June. When Prince Bernhard first received Wellington's unexpected order to abandon the crossroads, he immediately warned Baron Perponcher Sedelnitsky, suspecting an error. With the support of Constant Rebecque, Chief of Staff to the Prince of Orange, they chose to countermand the withdrawal. At Genappe, Prince Bernhard soon received firm confirmation of the French advance. He rode straight to Quatre and deployed both battalions of the Orange Nassau Regiment alongside the 1st and 3rd 2nd Nassau-Usingen already present. Knowing the vital importance of the crossroads and the Bossu Wood, he placed the 1st Battalion on the Houtin-Laval Road, sent 2 companies to secure the wood's right edge, lined the front with skirmishers, and positioned 2 guns on the Namur Road. The rest formed a small reserve behind the crossroad. The Dutch regiments advanced into the woods and deployed in formed ranks, with skirmishers pushed forward. This was not an ideal employment of these units, as they were not specialized in forest warfare. However, the situation demanded immediate action, and Prince Bernhard responded accordingly. His decision would later be commended by both the hereditary prince and the duke. The volunteer Jaegers were positioned to the extreme right of the woods. 1 artillery piece stood on the road to Charleroi, and 2 on the road to Namur. Infantry regiments stood behind the artillery positions guarding the guns. Prince Bernhard then dispatched a messenger to Baron Perponcher Sedelnitsky, explaining his dispositions and the weakness of his force. Baron Perponcher Sedelnitsky, upon receiving the message, ordered Van Bilant's brigade to concentrate at Nivelles. Baron von Gargan rode to headquarters at Braine-le-Comte to obtain instructions from the Prince of Orange and Constant Rebecque. Although the prince had already left for the Duchess of Richmond's ball in Brussels, the news was passed to him via his aide-de-camp, Lieutenant Henry Webster. Lieutenant Henry Webster arrived in the ballroom shortly after midnight with the letter. The prince then informed Wellington, who acted calmly and public but in the midst of his generals, expressed his despair as, "Napoleon has humbugged me, by God, he has gained 24 hours' march on me." Immediately Wellington whispered instructions to the Prince of Orange and Duke of Brunswick, both of whom made their excuses and departed before supper was served. Urgent orders were dispatched to every commander in the region for proper concentration of all the troops, and instructions were given to force march towards Quatre. Brussels was a sea of motion as the Army Reserve assembled in the park and spent the night preparing for the impending departure. The order to move was finally delivered at 4 a.m. The shrill of the pipes and the beat of the drums rent the morning air. The Highland troops from Sir Thomas Picton's division marched to the tune of Highland Laddie. The officers and men appeared to be in high spirits, and nothing could be more martial or more imposing than their appearance. Other British regiments followed, then the Nassau, and at 8 a.m. the Duke of Wellington and his staff rode out of the capital. However, it would be a while before the troops under Picton, Alton and Cook would reach the crossroads. Baron Perponcher Sedlnitsky had left Nivelle at first light with the 27th Jaegers and the 8th Dutch Militia Battalion in order to reinforce the post and to assume the command. While on the high road, they had encountered a detachment of 50 Prussian cavalrymen from the 1st Schlesisches Husaren Regiment, led by 2nd Lieutenant Karl von Sellin. The cavalry had been separated from its brigade during the fighting on the 15th, and having no cavalry at his disposal, Baron Perponcher Sedlnitsky suggested that they accompany him to the crossroads. Upon the arrival of the Prince of Orange at about 6 a.m., the small detachment of Prussian cavalrymen skirmished with the enemy and made several charges against the French lancers and skirmishers positioned nearby, so as to make the French believe that the Allied force at the crossroads was greater in size than it actually was. At 3:30 a.m., the Prince of Orange returned to his headquarters in Braine-le-Comte and made preparations for the crossroad. The hereditary Prince of Orange-Nassau had deployed the Allied troops at Quatre across a wide frontage, so as to create the impression of greater strength. The Prince allowed a similar deployment of the troops as had been deployed by Prince Bernhard the previous night. The artillery was positioned on the roads from Charleroi and Namur, in the area south of the Bois de Bossu. The guns on the high road to Charleroi were covered by 2 companies from the 27th Jaegers Battalion. The rest of the battalion were deployed at Gémioncourt, or acted as skirmishers in the cornfields in front of the village of Piromont. The ground in the center, north of Gémioncourt, was defended by troops from the 5th Dutch Militia. The Nassau Volunteer Jaegers and 8th Militia Battalion occupied the extreme right wing, while the remainder of the Allied troops at Quatre were held at the crossroads or positioned in the Bois de Bossu. The Duke and his entourage arrived at Quatre shortly after 10 a.m. Having reconnoitered the field, he complimented the hereditary prince on the deployment of the troops. The Duke, finding everything surprisingly quiet at 12:30 p.m., resolved to ride to the Prussian headquarters at the Windmill of Bry for a meeting with Blücher and verbally agree the measures for a decisive battle. Napoleon, at daybreak, he instructed Marshal Soult, his chief of staff, to inform Marshal Ney that the 3,000 cuirassiers under Kellermann was being placed at his disposal. Towards 11 a.m., upon receipt of the message, Marshal Ney sent word to the respective officers to march their units immediately towards the crossroads. However, some considerable time was required before the orders could be executed. Unknown to the French, this delay would have catastrophic consequence. Coupled with a few more misfortunes, events like this would tilt the fate of the Waterloo campaign. At around 2 p.m., the divisional artillery positioned on the farm of Delsaut open-fired at the Dutch positions. The Battle of Quatre has finally begun. At around 2 p.m., the divisional artillery positioned on the farm of Delsaut open-fired at the Dutch positions. The 9th French Infantry Division under Comte Foy formed up in Kulms along the high road. The 2nd Brigade marched across the valley towards Gémioncourt. Comte Piret's 2nd Cavalry Division guarded their flank. Comte Foy's 1st Brigade remained on the plateau close to the farm of L'Aïral. To their right flank was the head of the 5th Division under Comte Bachelou. Bachelou's men were the first to come in contact with the Allies, They engaged the defending Dutch and Belgian troops in and around the farm of Pierremont and threw them back. The chasseurs and lanciers charged the skirmishers from the 27th Jaegers Battalion and broke them. The battalion had a great many men killed and wounded, including their lieutenant colonel. The French infantry advanced rapidly and took possession of Pierremont and the majority of the ground immediately in front of the Allied position. They were now able to direct their efforts towards the center. A cloud of French skirmishers moved rapidly against the troops defending Grand and Petit Pierrepont, and the Bois de Bossu. The sheer weight of French numbers in the center drove the Allied skirmishers back. Baron Perponcher Sedlnitsky had witnessed these events, and realizing that the French had gained a significant advantage, he ordered the 7th Belgian Line Battalion to support their comrades in the center. The battalion advanced into the open ground between the Bois de Bossu and the high road to Charleroi, and extended in line. At this time, the 5th Militia Battalion advanced in column and deployed on the right of Gémioncourt under heavy canister and musket fire. The farm buildings had been occupied by 2 companies from the 27th Jaegers, and so the 2 flanker companies from the 5th Militia were hurriedly pushed forward and deployed in front of the complex. But here they suffered from the close-range enemy fire, as the French tirailleurs used the high corn as cover. The French cavalry that had reformed in the hollow ground to the south of Gémioncourt charged against the 5th Dutch Militia Battalion. The militia men barely formed squares and somehow managed to repel the charge. The stubborn French cavalry cycled their charge for 4 consecutive times but were repelled every time. However, the incessant enemy artillery and small arms fire eventually forced the 5th Militia Battalion to retire some distance toward the crossroads. The hereditary Prince of Orange-Nassau placed himself at the head of the battalion, and waving his hat in the air and calling to the troops, he led them forward. Meanwhile, the 8th Militia Battalion had been forced to withdraw from its position on the extreme right in front of the Bois de Bossu, due to the fierce cannonade to which it was subjected from a French battery situated on the heights close to the farm of Delsart. The Allied artillery was withdrawn because of the heavy losses it had sustained. Throughout this period, Prince Bernhard had remained in reserve to the right of the Bois de Bossu with the 1st Battalion 28th Orange-Nassau, where he had been joined by the 8th Militia Battalion. But as the French skirmishers encroached, he was compelled to detach 2 companies to skirmish with them and to stop them forcing a passage into the wood. Together with the Nassau Volunteer Jaegers and the troops of the 1st Battalion of the 2nd Nassau-Usingen Regiment, the Allied skirmishers were able to maintain the line along the edge of the wood, but they were also subjected to an incessant artillery barrage from the French guns on the heights at Delsot. With their attacks having gained success, the French 4th Light Regiment occupied the farm of Gémioncourt, while the 100th Line Regiment took a position immediately to the rear of the complex. The 6th Chasseurs Regiment and 5th Lancer Regiment supported this movement. The vigor of the attack brought the cavalry into the path of the 5th Militia Battalion once again. This time, the French horsemen were able to cause considerable disorder, and the movement was turned into a complete rout. The hereditary Prince of Orange-Nassau narrowly escaped being taken prisoner by the 5th Lancers by seeking refuge with 2 companies of the 7th Belgian Line Battalion. However, the French cavalry pursued the debris of the 5th Dutch Militia towards the Allied line with malicious fervor. On his return from the Bussy windmill to the crossroads at Quatre, Wellington found that the French had already occupied Pierremont and the farm of Gémioncourt, and that they had pushed back the Netherlands troops in the center. The Duke of Wellington barely managed to escape the clutches of the French cavalry that reached the crossroads by seeking shelter with the 92nd Regiment of Foot, Gordon Highlanders, who had fortunately just arrived from their long march. Luckily for the Duke, Picton's reinforcements continued to arrive as the Dutch fell back toward the crossroads. Wellington ordered Picton's men to march along the road to Namur and to lie in the ditches, where they would be sheltered from the French artillery fire. Wellington immediately dispatched the veteran British troops of the 1st Battalion 95th Regiment of Foot to secure the left of the Allied line in the vulnerable village of Theil. The green-clad soldiers, armed with Baker rifles, under the command of Sir Andrew Barnard, marched along the road to Namur and extended into the fields to the north of Pyrmont to prevent the French from making any further progress in this direction. After more than an hour of fighting, the 1st Allied Cavalry finally reached the field. Baron van Merlin's Dutch Belgian Light Cavalry Brigade deployed on the left of the Charleroi Road with supporting horse artillery. The Prince of Orange immediately tasked Lieutenant Colonel Boreel and the 6th Dutch Hussars with halting the French advance. Forced to charge without time to form properly, they collided with the 6th Chasseurs north of Gémioncourt and were driven back with heavy losses. The 5th Belgian Light Dragoons joined them but were also swept back in disorder toward the crossroads. French chasseurs pursued boldly, galloping as far as the guns on the high road. Even a volley from the 92nd Highlanders did not halt them. The French chasseurs slashed down the Allied gunners and artillery horses before withdrawing towards the French positions. French infantry pressed steadily forward, threatening the Namur Road, the crucial line of communication between Wellington and Blucher. The situation on the Anglo-Dutch front grew increasingly dangerous. Meanwhile, at Ligny, Napoleon launched the 3rd Corps and the 4th Corps against Saint-Amand and Ligny, shortly after Wellington left Blucher's headquarters. Unlike the cautious Dutch, the Prussians eagerly accepted battle, counting on Wellington's aid. I bet you have watched our detailed documentary on the Battle of Ligny. If you haven't, the link's in the description. Back at Quatre, Picton's division formed along the Namur Road. Kempt deployed the 28th, 32nd, and 79th Foot in the high crops on the left, while Pack placed the 1st, 42nd, and 44th in the adjacent rye fields. The 92nd held the main highway. Hanoverian Landwehr under Colonel Best moved forward in support. Fighting intensified inside the Bois de Bossu, where French skirmishers forced Prince Bernhard's troops back to a stream. Reinforcements arrived in the form of Brunswickers. Grey Jaegers moved into the woods, the 2nd Light Battalion approached Pyrmont, and the Lieb and 1st Line battalions formed between the wood and the road. The Duke of Brunswick calmly led his hussars under artillery fire, pipe in hand, as round shots screamed across the Namur Road. Picton's division struggled through suffocating heat and tall crops that obscured visibility. As they emerged near Gémioncourt, French infantry poured volleys into them. Picton ordered an immediate counter-charge. The 42nd and 79th Highlanders drove back the French 2nd Light Regiment, but suffered heavily when French forces reformed around Pyrmont with artillery support. Reports of Highland casualties mounted. Meanwhile, the Foot Guards were on forced march towards the battlefield. By about 4 p.m., most Brunswick units had arrived and formed a defensive line around La Bergerie and the stream along the Bossu Wood. French artillery fire was relentless. As Jérôme Bonaparte's 6th Division then entered the fight, Marshal Ney received a letter from the Emperor. Napoleon, believing Quatre already taken, sent Ney orders to move behind the Prussians, orders that conflicted with the desperate battle before him. Ney therefore pushed hard into the Bossu Wood, forcing Allied skirmishers back. The Brunswick Lieb and 1st Line battalions endured punishing French artillery fire. When 2 French battalions advanced on them, the Duke of Brunswick led a counterattack with his Uhlans, but it failed. Kellermann's dragoons then charged. Mistaking them for cuirassiers, panic spread among the Allied front. As the Brunswick infantry retired in square, they came under crushing fire. Amid the confusion, the Duke rode forward to steady his men and was shot through the wrist and abdomen. He collapsed and later died on the Namur Road. Despite their loss, the Brunswickers held. French artillery battered their cavalry, forcing them back toward the Gordon Highlanders. Lieutenant Colonel Cameron deployed his grenadier company to fire into the flank of the advancing dragoons, and Wellington's ordered volley finally repelled them. French infantry of the Third Line pushed within 300 paces of the crossroads, but a fierce counterattack by the Gordons, with Cameron mortally wounded, drove them back. On the right, confusion led the 42nd and 44th to mistake French lancers for friendly Belgians. The 42nd were ridden down before squares could form. A close-range volley from the 44th finally drove the lancers off. As ammunition dwindled, Allied battalions retired to squares along the Namur road. Alten's 3rd Division then arrived, reinforcing the exhausted line. To the east, Allied troops, including the 95th Rifles and Brunswick's 2nd Light Battalion, pressed into Piraumont, pushing French skirmishers back. Realizing the Allies were being reinforced, Ney urgently summoned d'Erlon's 1st Corps, only to learn around 5:30 p.m. that Napoleon had redirected it to Ligny. Desperate, Ney launched Kellermann's cuirassiers in a massive charge. Repulsed on the left by the 30th Foot, they smashed into the 69th on the right just as it formed line, cutting down many and capturing both colors. The cuirassiers then advanced towards the Hanoverians, but their disciplined volleys were enough to shatter Ney's last resort to win the battle. Kellermann's horse was shot as the survivors withdrew. At last, the foot guards arrived in strength. The 1st Brigade cleared the Bossu Wood before French artillery forced them to pull back to the rivulet. The 2nd Brigade deployed near the farm, covering the field still littered with cuirassiers. The last of the Brunswick light troops and their artillery reached the crossroads, marking the turning point. Now reinforced, Wellington ordered a general advance. Dutch, Brunswick, and British battalions pushed forward under heavy fire. Further French cavalry attacks faltered. With dusk approaching, and the absence of d'Erlon's corps sealing his failure, Ney's exhausted troops fell back toward Frasnes. Quatre remained firmly in Allied hands, and Wellington had preserved the vital crossroads that prevented Napoleon from splitting the Anglo-Prussian forces on the eve of Waterloo. During the course of the Battle of Quatre, the French had advanced on all fronts and had almost reached the road to Namur, which linked the Allied army with the Prussians at Sombrefer. The situation at Quatre was perilous for the Duke of Wellington, but one thing is for certain. Had the Dutch forces under the hereditary prince retreated, as Wellington had commanded earlier, the Prussians would have been enveloped on all sides by the French. Napoleon wrote to de Montholon on St. Helena, but for the heroic determination of the Prince of Orange, who with a handful of men dared to stand firm at Quatre, I would have taken the English army in flagrante delicto and would have conquered as the Russians at Friedland. About 4,000 casualties on both sides, the road to Brussels and Fleurus inundated with men crying in agony. To all intents and purposes, the Battle of Quatre was over, and the Allied troops had maintained their ground. Although the Prussians were defeated and were pushed back from Ligny, Napoleon was not happy with the outcome of Quatre. As Marshal Ney fell back towards Frasnes and united his forces with the Emperor, Wellington ordered his forces a few paces north, to the vicinity of the hamlet of Waterloo, which we shall cover in our next video. Thank you for watching. Have a great time.